So I had to consider aspects like recruiting, talent management, and compensation by talking to my Omoda and Jaecoo executive peers from the automotive industry and rely on their impressions about the things I was proposing. And that is something I believe every HR leader should do, which is to lean on business to understand whether if their policies and idea make sense.
Welcome to the All in Recruitment podcast by Manatal, where we explore best practices, learnings, and trends with leaders in the recruitment space. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channels on YouTube and Spotify to stay tuned for our weekly episodes. I'm your host, Lydia, and this week we have Flávio Tozetto of Omoda and Jaecoo Brasil. Welcome to the show, Flávio.
Thanks for having me, Lydia. Happy to be here.
So, Flávio, tell us about your journey in the people space so far. How has it been for you? What are some key takeaways that you've had? I mean, you've got an exciting role. We'll go into that. But so far, what's it like?
Sure. So it's been great. Me as a person, I always loved dealing with people and their personalities. So when I started working with HR, everything made sense, right? I understand the HR department as important as any business department because people build and develop companies, and companies create products and solutions. So HR leaders must be able to define strategy that will better support business and their employees. If you don't have like a clear people strategy, it doesn't matter how good your products are, you will struggle a lot.
So, in your current role as head of human resources and corporate, right, at Omoda and Jaecoo, what are some key areas that you have prioritized so far? I understand this is you joined sometime last year, right?
Yeah, correct. So right now, my main responsibilities as head of HR and corporate at Omoda and Jaecoo Brasil are to develop and also implement a robust and consistent plan to execute the company's objectives in the country. When we talk about HR, we are talking about people and culture, right? And in a global company, in addition to the daily challenges, we also need to think about all the particularities of the organization's location, but always be aligned with the global plans. So right now, we are currently developing our Brazilian team and expanding it according to the company's objectives and needs, selecting the headquarters that best fits the brand's positioning, and also to be close to the strategic partners for the business. So in addition to that, we are also developing plan career that will engage better the team, and we're also doing a lot of benchmarking with the biggest organizations in Brazil. So moving away from the macro into some more concrete actions, I'm prioritizing the employee's life cycle. So from the moment we interview our candidates that eventually will become our employees to the moment when they will have to go to the office to do their job, their experience should be flawless, right? If we want our customers to have a good experience with our products, we should also make sure that our employees are also having a good experience with their collaborators lifecycle at Omoda Jaecoo Brazil. Other things that I prioritize a lot are to foster a good, trustful, and positive environment through transparency with leaders and their employees, as well as providing a good place where different cultures could coexist, win-win. We do have lots of nationalities working together in here, and with the right leaders paying attention to how important it is to balance culture and ways of working, the final outcome could be really good. So we are now in a situation where we are building everything from scratch. So putting together all the strategy, considering past experience, considering data, considering benchmarking, so then we could begin with the right foot.
This is a Chinese automotive brand coming into Brazil. So, as you mentioned earlier, it is in that building phase. So how do you, what are some principles or fundamentals that you use towards building HR policies from scratch for a new automotive brand that's coming into Brazil? And who might be the key stakeholders in this?
Yeah, that's a great question, Lydia. Well, I come from the tech industry, right? As we know, the tech industry is really mature when it comes to having a strategic HR, especially if you're going to compare with some traditional segments like the automotive industry. So the first thing I had to do when I started designing policies from scratch was to use my experience from past companies I've worked in the past and try to combine them together, considering our local automotive needs. So I had to consider aspects like recruiting, talent management, and compensation by talking to my Omoda and Jaecoo executive peers from the automotive industry and rely on their impressions about the things I was proposing. That is something I believe every HR leader should do, which is to lean on business to understand whether if their policies and idea make sense, because at the end of the day, Lydia, HR should support business and it's responsible for eliminating any barriers that may arise and leaving the path open for employees to perform at 100%.
Now, what are some key considerations or maybe some factors that are unique to the Brazilian market that would possibly go back or influence the way that you design these new policies?
Yeah, well, I see a few things to consider. First, definitely labor laws, right? I've worked for other markets in the past in other countries, and Brazil stands out because we have a labor law full of peculiarities. Not saying that it's good or bad, but the first thing I had to think when writing the policies was which are the risks this policy would give me if we implement them. That's a tough spot to be in because I had to discard great ideas because of potential risks we would face. Second thing is the Brazilian market for the automotive industry is really strong. We cannot find a country like Brazil that is able to sell more than 3 million cars per year. But that does not mean the automotive industry is mature in Brazil from the HR perspective. Far from it, actually. So sometimes the policies and ways of working I was thinking were good, but the Brazilian market was not yet ready to have them because we are a few steps behind. So building a plan considering the Brazilian maturity was also very important for designing policies.
Now, in terms of, you mentioned earlier that you come from tech, right? Being quite progressive and quite forward in terms of HR policies and practices, and then into traditional industries such as automotive. How would you say, what might be the differences? In what ways should a traditional industry or some ways of working in HR in these industries need to move forward?
Yeah, it's another great question, Lydia. So I see there's a couple of ways to answer that. The business way and the corporate way. So from the business way, everything from the automotive industry will start from a more traditional environment. Everything it's bigger. The numbers are bigger. Usually in tech, you are working for something specifically. You are going to develop very specific solution for a certain type of situation, or you're going to develop a game. And whenever you are, hiring people or recruiting for people, usually you're going to deal with pieces of the whole solution. So the solution from tech, it's very far from the employee side. So sometimes the engagement of a tech employee, it's not that good because what he or she is doing, what that developer is doing, it's very far from the final product. While from the automotive industry, for the traditional segment, which we have a product that you know what exactly that is, the engagement of the employee, it's much better, it's higher, as the employee could see, could feel the product. So from the tech, I used to see that we were used to lack a lot of engagement of a certain areas. In the automotive industry, not really. Everyone is more engaged. So that is for business, right? Other thing about business is that, as I said, our numbers are very expressive, are very big. We are also always dealing with millions, billions. We are dealing with influencers. We are dealing with press. And in the tech industry, that happens, but not that often, and also in a smaller proportion. So let's say that the exposure is smaller. From the corporate side, I understand that the culture segment of tech is way better than the culture segment from the automotive industry. Because again, something that I see a lot, the tech industry, that the tech industry is doing and promoting, is to always promote the values of the company, is always to promote any sort of initiatives that will make the employee to feel welcome and to feel more sort of belonging to the company's values, that does not happen quite often in the automotive industry. That is why I'm trying to propose those things to happen in the car segment much more often. So there's a lot of situations, but I could quote those examples because I think that they really fit to what you asked for.
Now, building a team from ground up is it usually by default requires attracting the right kind of talent, right? So in terms of identifying the right kind of skills or the specific types of skills that you need for success, how do you go about doing it at this phase?
Yeah. So building scorecards with predefined questions and expected answers from a screening perspective is extremely important because we will be able to focus on what we want to find in candidates, right? But as important as having such scorecards is to invest in the first 20 minutes of the initial interview by explaining everything to the candidates. So then they know exactly what they will be facing. That sort of methodology, if I could call it that, also serves as a screening parameter because once we expose the real challenge to candidates, they will also have the opportunity to evaluate if the opportunity makes sense to them or not. And I see a lot of interviewers, recruiters, and also hiring managers that are not investing their first interview minutes in explaining everything to the candidates, and that's not good. It creates some sort of uncertain mindset in front of the candidate, especially when the company is scaling up like ours, right? Now, if you have a formatted scorecard and we invest a few minutes by explaining the current scenario, the challenges, all the plans, and how the candidate would fit in the organization, the chances to find the people that knows how to do the job and want to be part of what is being offered are extremely high.
Now, that culture point, the second point that you brought up, wanting to be part of that success, right? That culture element, is there a sort of best practice that you tend to fall back on when it comes to identifying the right kind of person for the culture?
Yes, there is. Actually, myself, I am one of the key stakeholders that also perform the interviews of new joiners. And in my conversation with leaders, especially with leaders, because right now we are, hiring by looking for the leadership team layer first and then go to the operation side. Every time that I'm going to be talking to them, I also have these sort of scorecards that I just told you, but my focus is on culture. And the culture part that I'm focused on requires a certain type of skills that goes to our core values. So in my conversation with them, I do have specific questions with expected answers that I want to hear from candidates, in which they're going to try to give their very best to me, and then I could understand if what they're bringing to me really corresponds to the values that our company has. It's funny because our rate of declining candidates has much more to do with culture than with tech abilities. So that shows how important it is, the core culture values in our company whenever we are assessing candidates.
Now, going back to assessing, a great point there. How does technology or recruitment technology or even data play a role in this phase of planning and setting up the foundations for operations?
Yeah, so as we are still scaling, there are some things that are not fully done yet, but the strategy is built, right? So we are a data-driven company, Lydia. So I believe that companies that are not working at the forefront of technology today, with it as one of their main allies, may not succeed in the near future. And certainly that applies to the HR area. So technology should be a great ally for everything that we do in HR, especially with systems like all the ATS and also HRES systems. However, we must use them wisely. We need to gather these numbers from the tools and turn them into insights, and then come up with actions and measure those actions using KPIs. I also see that AI will help us a lot to automate many of the tasks. So the future of HR, as per, of course, my perspective, will be based on the human aspect, which is something that cannot be done by an algorithm. So things like writing job descriptions, posting jobs are becoming more and more driven by AI. So we could start using these technologies actually as a way to improve our quality and to begin focus even more on what's really important, which is dealing with people.
Now, taking technology as a backbone of HR operations now, having been in the industry or having been in this particular field for some time, how would you describe the role of a HR professional or someone in talent acquisition today?
So I see that the role of talent acquisition has evolved a lot throughout the years, Lydia. Before, we were used to have a very fragmented team in which different people were used to deal with pieces of the talent acquisition cycle, and they were, doing something extremely specific for that piece of talent acquisition. So one person was in charge of sourcing, another person was in charge of screening, other person was in charge of interviewing and offer. So with the advent of technology, I saw that everyone started to do more tasks. So that is something extremely important because by having more tools, people were able to understand that they could do more with the help and the advent of technology. Now, the way how everything is moving forward, I see that the major aspect of talent acquisition would be purely based on interviewing. Because you, again, do a post of a job without having like a human factor in it. You could write a decent job description without, having to review everything with a hiring manager. But to interview people, it's a different story because again, there is the human element that is more important. And I'm used to say that a good recruiter is someone that knows how to hire and who to hire. But the good recruiter is also someone that is really good when he or she knows when the person is not a good fit. And that human aspect, the human behavior, technology could not play a role in it. So I see that the advent of technology has been giving us a lot of different tools to deal with it. And the future of TA would be purely based on interviewing.
And finally, Flavio, what is your favorite or most memorable recruitment story?
Yeah. I spent almost 1.5 years of my life managing a talent acquisition team in Mexico, in Guadalajara. I'm from Brazil, born and raised, but I have a deep appreciation by Mexico. I mix also my Mexican friends. But I remember that we were having like a party after work. We were able to launch a very specific product. So we were discussing, eating, and just having like a party. And then I started to engage with another employee that I got to know over there at the party. And then after, I don't know, the whole night that we were discussing and talking about business, trends, market, and everything, um, he goes and says something like, the HR guy that hired me was really good because I felt comfortable because I came from Peru to Mexico and here I am 2 years later. And I was like, what is your name? And then he gave his name. I have a very good memory for names. And I was like, I hired you. And he was like, really? Was it you? So that was extremely interesting because
Oh, that's a lovely
sometimes,
coincidence.
right, we are dealing and recruiting
Yes.
people all day for months, years, and sometimes we might not have the knowledge of how impactful it is our job. We are changing people's lives every single day, and I changed that guy's life. We were discussing a few years after he was hired. I brought him. He was telling good things about me. I didn't know that he was mentioning about me, and I didn't know that I hired him. So I think that history is very, very, very fun.
Yeah, that's fun and amusing, and it's so really rewarding when you're talking about it, right? It's like having a direct, indirect testimonial coming at you, and you're thinking it's someone else, and
Yep.
and then you see the results of your work. So I think that's a great story. Thank you so much, Flavio, for your time and these great insights. And I wish you all the best in your efforts to build the function there. So for those who are listening in and who want to connect with you and maybe pick up a conversation later, where's the best place to connect with you?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Lilia. It's been a pleasure sharing these personal and professional thoughts with you. So the audience can reach me out through my LinkedIn page. You can type my name, or you can go to Omoda and Jaecoo Brasil in LinkedIn. Uh, for sure, I'm going to be one of the few profiles that pops out over there because we are still a small company, we're still a small team, but feel free to drop me a message and connect over there.
Well, thanks again, Flavio. And we have been in conversation with Flávio Tozetto of Omoda and Jaecoo Brasil. Thank you for joining us, and remember to subscribe to stay tuned for more weekly episodes from All in Recruitment.